right, so you're ready to trade in that apartment for a place to finally call your own, huh?
It's a big step.
It is. But this deep dive is going to make you a pro at spotting all those house hunting red flags. Like take drainage, for instance. This source was talking about it. And I got to be honest,
Yeah.
I never would have even thought about it.
It's one of those things, right?
Really?
It can be a really big deal.
Is it really that big of a deal?
Oh, yeah, because it's not just like, oh, there's a little puddle in your yard. We're talking foundation problems.
Oh, okay.
You know, cracking, settling, even flooding.
So it's not just about, like, rain puddles. It's like structural damage from the rain.
Yeah, and that's a nightmare to try and fix and super expensive.
Okay. All right. So drainage, big one. What about, like, renovation? Say the previous owners were really into DIY. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends, right?
Yeah.
Because some DIY is great, but some DIY is a disaster waiting to happen. Like, imagine you move into your dream home, and then all of a sudden the lights are flickering, and you call an electrician, and they tell you the wiring is a total mess because somebody tried to do it themselves and didn't know what they were doing.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying maybe ask about who did the work on the house.
It's always a good idea to ask.
Okay. This source also mentioned, like, pests.
Ah.
I don't even want to think about it.
Nobody does.
Okay, but how do you even, like, check for that? Because I'm not trying to unearth an anthill or anything.
So you're going to want to look for telltale signs, right? So things like droppings, especially near baseboards, in the attic, or look at the wood. See if it looks like it's been chewed on. Termites are sneaky. You don't want to mess around with those guys.
Okay, that's enough to make anyone hire an exterminator before they even move in. But
Right.
Okay, so we've got drainage, DIY disasters, unwanted guests. What else? What other red flags should people be on the lookout for?
That musty smell. You walk into a house and it just smells, I don't know, a little bit musty.
Like the old library or something.
Yeah, like an old library. Like maybe it just needs to be aired out.
Right.
But it could be mold or mildew. And especially in those areas that are more prone to moisture, like basements, bathrooms, under the sink.
So you really got to sniff out those problems, huh?
Yes. Yeah. Because it could be, again, that there's no ventilation, or worse, a leaky pipe that's been dripping slowly behind the walls and you don't even know it.
See, these are the things I wouldn't even, like, think to look. Okay, so we've covered some of the, like, inside stuff. What about the outside?
Yeah.
What about the roof?
Oh, the roof?
Is that something people need to be worried about? Because, like, a leaky faucet I can handle, but a leaky roof.
Right, exactly. A leaky roof is a much bigger problem. And you're going to want to check for water stains, discoloration, especially in the ceilings.
Okay.
But then also go outside and look at the roof itself. Look for missing shingles, curling shingles. Those are all signs that you probably need a new roof.
And that's another expense you don't want to have to worry about right after you move in.
Exactly. When you're looking at a house, don't be afraid to ask, how old's the HVAC system?
No, that's a good point.
How old is the plumbing, the electrical? Because if those haven't been updated recently, that's another potential expense down the line.
So it's like, it's not just about what you see, it's about what you don't see as well.
Absolutely.
It's like being a detective, but for houses. Okay, so we've covered the house itself, but what about the other big thing? The neighborhood. I mean, a dream home on a nightmare street is not really a dream come true.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. A house doesn't exist in isolation. Let's talk about the neighborhood next.
So, okay, we were talking about the neighborhood. This source mentioned abandoned houses. That's not a good sign.
Not really, no. I mean, one abandoned house, okay, maybe. But if there are a bunch of them, that's when you start to think, what's going on here?
But it's like, is this a neighborhood that's, like, on the decline?
Exactly. It can be a sign of bigger problems, and it might affect property values. Like if you're looking to resell down the line, it could be difficult.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what else? Like, what are some other neighborhood red flags?
Think about your lifestyle. Are you someone who wants to be in the middle of the action?
Yeah.
Close to shops, restaurants, all that.
Right.
Or do you prefer something a little quieter, a little more like family friendly?
Yeah, that's a good point. What about things like schools? This source mentioned that.
Schools are super important, even if you don't have kids yourself.
Right.
It's going to affect your property value. And of course, crime rates, you want to feel safe in your neighborhood.
Of course.
So those are definitely things to look into.
It's almost like, it's like online dating for houses. Like, you've got to do your research before you commit, right?
Exactly. You got to do your due diligence.
So let's say, okay, we found perfect house, or it seems perfect, it's structurally sound, the neighborhood's great, but it doesn't have absolutely everything on our wish list. Like, maybe it doesn't have that chef's kitchen we always dreamed of, but it's still a really great house.
Sure.
How do you balance that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Your needs versus your wants.
Yeah. How do you even begin to figure that out?
Well, I always say, start with your non-negotiables. What are those things that you absolutely have to have in a house?
Okay.
Maybe it's a home office.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a big backyard for your dog.
Yeah, whatever it is.
And then you can start thinking about the things that would be nice to have.
Right, but you're willing to be flexible on.
Exactly. Maybe you can live without that fireplace.
Yeah.
And maybe you're okay with doing a little bit of work yourself. Like if the bathroom needs updating, you're handy, you can do it yourself.
You're right.
It's all about priorities.
So you're saying, like, know your limits. Don't get so caught up in the, like, excitement of house hunting
Right.
that you forget about the practicalities of it all.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's a huge financial decision, and you want to make sure it's the right one for you.
Right. So it's like a balance between, like, falling in love with the house,
Yeah.
but also being smart about it.
Absolutely. It's about finding a place that you love that also makes sense for your life.
And there's no such thing as a perfect house.
Right.
There's going to be some give and take.
Exactly. Every house is going to have its quirks. It's about finding the one that you can live with and that you can see yourself in for years to come.
Like a good pair of jeans.
There you go.
They might not fit perfectly off the rack,
Sure.
but once you get them tailored, they're yours for life. Okay, so much good advice. This has been amazing.
Glad to help.
What's the one thing you wish you had known before you bought your first place? What's the one thing you wish you had known before you bought your first place?
You know, the best advice I ever got was to try and picture living in the house in all 4 seasons.
All 4 seasons.
Yeah, because it's easy to fall in love with a house when it's, a beautiful spring day, the sun's shining.
Right.
But what about when it's the middle of winter?
Oh, okay.
Is there enough natural light? Are there drafts you didn't notice before? And then summer, how's that AC unit holding up when it's scorching hot outside?
That's such a good point. It's like you walk in and it looks great, but you don't know how it's going to feel
Exactly.
the rest of the year.
You got it.
Okay, so think long term. What else?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like lots of listings will say, charming fireplace, but is it even functional?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. Or the backyard looks huge in the pictures, but then you get there and it's like, well,
it's a little smaller than you thought.
exactly. So yeah, ask questions, get a feel for the place.
It's okay to be, like, a little bit nosy.
A little bit. It's a big decision. You're allowed.
This has been so helpful. I feel like I'm ready to find my dream house now.
That's what I like to hear.
Thanks to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, buying a house is a big step.
It is.
But with a little bit of knowledge and a lot of careful consideration,
Yeah.
you'll find the perfect place to call home.
Happy house hunting.